Okay, welcome back. Let's go see if our thing actually works before we get much further. So let's run this guy, and I'm going to hit the top button, and it says yes. And if I hit it again, it just gives me random numbers. Now I'm going to bring up the profiler, and oh, that's not the existing profiler. Let me get rid of some of these old sessions and add the currently running one. Okay. Now, I'm going to wait for it kind of settle down. And then I'm going to start clicking the button. Because these things are going into scope and out of scope, into scope and out of scope, over and over and over, there's probably not going to be that much impact of me hitting this button. In fact, if in that case, it looks like the memory is actually going down. How in the world is that possible? Why isn't this thing ramping up? Well, the reason is this is all happening on the stack. Things are going into and out of scope. Even though we're allocating a huge chunk of memory, it's just that there's not much else going on here. So when we get to line 72, this guy is done and he's freed up. So we're gonna confound the thing. We're gonna make it a little bit more complicated. So now, when we finish one, I'm going to increase the size of the array every time we click. So we start off with like 100, and then I'm going to go to 1,000, etc., etc., etc. And so, for example, here I'm going to say, let me say array size equals, so I can see what the array size is, because it's going to change. And this guy really is junk, not index. Not that that really matters, but geez. And then down here, I'm going to do array size. Ooh, that's a cool little compound operator, isn't it? That means multiply times 10 and keep going. So now when we look at the profiler, yes, these things are going to be increasingly, it's still going to be on the stack. I'm still going to be creating a bunch of stuff, but I'm going to be asking for it a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger. And what we should see is the stack remains unchanged, but the heap is going to get more and more pressure on it. Okay, so let's try this. And let's get the profiler up and running. Let's see if the profiler can... Sometimes the profiler is pretty doggone smart and can figure it out on its own. Okay, I'm going to click on this guy just to bring him up to get him going. Okay, so now here's what should happen. When I click on this, I'm going to be consuming more space. Now you might think, as soon as he clicks that, you're going to see the memory go up. Not really. Let's do it again. So the size is now 1,000. Nah, yawn, no big deal. No, size is 10,000. Yeah, I can still handle it. 100,000. Nah, we're doing okay. 1 million. Ooh, I saw a bump. 10 million. Whoa. First of all, look at that. That little symbol right there, that means that garbage collection has taken place. Now we're really hurting. We're using one heck of a lot of memory on this device. What happens if I just keep on going? Boom, killed it. All right, so what have you learned? What you've learned is the stack, this little thin line right here, probably hasn't been used, well, no. Which one is the stack? Yeah, the stack here is only using 0.6 megabytes at this location. But the heap is at 45 megabytes. Okay? So is that telling you what you need to know? That when I make things bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, everything is going to grow on the heap until I run out of heap. Are you ever going to run out of stack? Probably not. Probably not. So garbage collection occurred on its own and when the thing died. When the thing died, the machine says, look, I don't even have to think anymore. The thing died, so therefore I'm going to start doing garbage collection right here and right now to get rid of all this mess that you created. Okay? Now, Is that all kind of making sense? I like the little profiler. It's actually pretty doggone cool. What have you learned? The stack is not really that important. That's where all the variables are stored, so I don't care about it. The heap is where all the big things are being stored, like 10,000 integers, that kind of stuff, where employee instances and button instances are being stored. Okay. Whew. All right. So I think we're done with that for a while, and now we're going to go back to the book on page 293, talking about an alternate technique for coming up with a way to wire a button. Okay. Because up to now, the only way we've ever wired a button is we've gone to, the designer, we've clicked on the button that we want, brought up the attributes, and then gone down here to where it says on click. That is just one way of doing it. And some people don't like doing things from the designer, and you want to do it all in code, as an example. So here's what we're going to do. We're gonna have an app that's got two buttons that we haven't used yet. And so we're going to have an interface. Okay, now we just talked about interfaces last time, so I want to implement an interface. Ooh. So I'm going to go back to this guy, and at the class level is where I say implements, and then a particular one I want is called view on click listener. View dot on click listener. On click listener. Boom. Now, as soon as you do that, it goes, hey, you signed up for a contract, and therefore you have to do the things that the contract says. It's sort of like, well, geez, I just implemented it like 5 seconds ago. Get off my back. But this is actually pretty good, because when this thing pops up with an error message, one of the things it's going to ask you to do is implement the methods. So if you click this, it is going to write code for you. It's going to create this thing called on click. Isn't that pretty cool? So it wrote this code for you. I kind of like that. So this was required by the interface. One more time. Interface is like a contract. If you say, I want to implement something called an on-click listener, well, then it's going to say, if you agree to that and you sign up for it, you must implement this thing. Okay. That kind of sort of makes sense? All right. And then that's step one, is I implemented an interface, and it forced me to create a method. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the buttons, the other two buttons. I'm going to leave the top button the way it is. But these other buttons, I'm going to tell it which class it should be listening for. Okay, so be in middle. And then there's a set. You guys have kind of sort of seen this before. Set on click listener. Set on click listener. Okay. And then which class has the implementing this interface? What's this one? And so there's a synonym for this class, and it's this. Okay. Now I'm just going to copy this and paste it because I'm lazy. Except this one is going to be button bottom. Now, this has some advantages, in that right now I only have one event handler called onClick, but I've got two buttons that are responding to that. Okay, now you might think, well, how am I going to tell them apart? Ooh, you remember when we passed the view thing? I didn't need my view here in this guy because I knew it was only coming from one location. But here I do not know which button was being pressed because both of them are using the same thing. Okay, does that kind of sort of make sense? So inside here, what I probably need to do is to do a switch statement. Something like switch, and basically the switch is going to be view. Actually, view dot get ID. Okay? And then let me go ahead and build the rest of my switch statement. So the case is going to be r dot ID dot be in middle. Okay, cool. Then something. I'm going to go ahead and just put a break in there. And then case r dot ID dot be in bottom. And put a break there. Okay, so it's just making sense. Since I've told the system that this class, activity main, is going to respond to the button events, and I have two buttons that are responding that are using this event handler, I'm going to have to ask it every time. Unlike here, I'm going to have to ask it every time, who the hell sent you? It's sort of like the return address on the envelope. Who sent you? So if it's the middle button, I'm going to say et display, only if I spell it right, append hello from middle. And then if it's the bottom button, I'm going to say et display append hello from bottom. Okay, let's go make sure this works, because I ain't the best typist in the world. I may have messed this up. So there's no need to do profiling now. We're kind of sort of done with that part. So hit this. It goes, hey, hello from the middle, and hello from the bottom. Okay, so this is an alternate technique for doing event handling. Okay. So there's a third one coming up in the next chapter, so let's just kind of sort of talk about this. So first of all, let's just review what happened. All right, so this is kind of important. To use this second technique, first, if I was going to number them, the first technique would be use the designer. The second technique would be implement the interface. Okay, so talking about number two, there's several moving parts. There's actually quite a few moving parts. First is I have to implement the dang interface, which causes me to create a method. And then I go to the buttons that have already been inflated, and I set their on-click listener and set it to the current class. And then I go down here to the event handler, which has to be called on-click. Now, unlike on line 63, I could call it anything I wanted. Here, it's got to be called on-click. And then I have a switch statement that says, who the hell's calling me? And then I write the event handler part. Okay, so lots of pieces. I interface, which implies that I have a method that got created. I set the on-click listener, and then I write the actual interface itself. Write the switch statement that does what it is it's supposed to do. And so one more time, in this case, I have two buttons that are using the same event handler, and that's okay. All right. Whew. So in every case, now this is going to be a little confusing, so just bear with me. In both the first and the second scenario, the event handler is the class. It's just that the first one, they hid all this implementation detail for us, okay? And so if I'm doing a very simple thing, I'm going to stick with the designer technique. I'll confess. It's just easy for, slam bam, thank you ma'am kind of a thing where I'm over and done with. If I'm doing something a little bit more complex, well then of course this other technique is an alternative. Doggone it, we're coming up on the 15-minute mark, and we're almost done with this chapter.